Hi everyone, it's me again, Joseph, your host for the Catechism for Kids series. Welcome back to our channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been terrified? Maybe you are afraid of the dark, or maybe you are scared of a spider. Well, one of the phrases Jesus said most was, "Do not be afraid." In the Bible, this phrase is mentioned 365 times, and guess what? 1 year has 365 days in it. That means Jesus wants us not to be afraid every day. And yet, he also wants us to know when to be terrified and what to be terrified of. When we are with Jesus, we have nothing to be afraid of. But if we are not with him, that changes everything. That's why these words from Jesus can be terrifying. What do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? Mark 8:36. On September 12th, we remember Saint Guy of Anderlecht. Saint Guy of Anderlecht experienced firsthand how terrifying the possibility of losing your soul can be. Saint Guy of Anderlecht is a hermit and pilgrim known as the Poor Man of Anderlecht, also called Guido Gidden, Y of Laken. He is the patron of Anderlecht, Belgium, epileptics, against epilepsy, rabies, rabid animals, animals with horns, bachelors, convulsive children, farmers, laborers, workers, protection of outbuildings, sheds and stables, sacristans, sextons, workhorses. Born in Anderlecht, Belgian, a small village outside of Brussels, Guy was raised and instructed by poor but pious parents. From an early age, he demonstrated great devotion to the Lord and to our Blessed Mother Mary. He proclaimed, while still a child, his wish to count himself among the special flock of Christ's, the poor for. His entire life, and dedicated himself to a life of poverty and service to those who had nothing. Throughout his childhood, he gave away all he had and spent his days visiting the sick and elderly of the town. It is said that when he worked the fields of his parents, an angel came and pushed the plow so that he might better pray undisturbed. Guy came to be recognized as a saint by many. As Guy matured, his devotion only increased. He spent hours in prayer each day, rarely sleeping, but instead contemplating the Lord. He traveled frequently to the Church of Our Lady at Lacan, outside Brussels, and demonstrated such devotion to Mary that the priest approached him and asked him to stay and serve the church. It was with tremendous joy that Saint Guy remained in the church as a sacristan, constantly cleaning, sweeping, polishing the altars, and attending to the most menial needs during the day, stopping only to befriend and serve those who were poor, and came on foot to the church looking for assistance. Each night he spent in prayer, rarely sleeping, but instead could be found kneeling at the foot of the cross, praying for the poor. After many years of service, a savvy merchant from Brussels sought to take advantage of Guy and offered him a share of his business, convinced him that through making more money, he could help more people. Guy wished nothing more than to remain in the church, but he saw the benefit in helping others and left his post. Almost immediately the business failed, and Guy, realizing his mistake, returned to the church only to find his position filled. Guy engaged in severe acts of penance for the remainder of his life, offering all he had to the Lord for his inconstancy. He traveled on pilgrimage on foot for 7 years, visiting Rome and then the Holy Land, returning to Belgium and serving as a guide at the holy shrines. Eventually, in his early 60s, Guy returned to Anderlecht and died soon thereafter. In death, a golden light shone around him, and a heavenly voice was heard by many, proclaiming his eternal reward in heaven. He was buried in Anderlecht, and many miracles were attributed to his intercession at his grave. His grave is said to have become a place of pilgrimage for horses too, when a horse stopped at it. Cab drivers of Brabant led an annual pilgrimage to Anderlecht until the beginning of World War I in 1914. They and their horses headed the procession, followed by farmers, groom, and stable boys, all leading their animals to be blessed. The village fair that ended the religious procession was celebrated by various games, music and feasting, followed by a competition to ride the carthorses bareback. The winner entered the church on bareback to receive a hat made of roses from the parish pastor. You can lose your soul. This reality should terrify us, and we should welcome the terror, because it exists to protect us from experiencing what the terror represents. And Saint Guy experienced this firsthand when he accepted the offer from the savvy merchant and left the church. He lost his soul at that time, and tempted by the money and richness. even though his intention was good at that time, to help the poor. However, his mistake is Saint Guy didn't rely on God's providence. Knowing when to be afraid is common sense. Knowing what to be afraid of is wisdom. We should be more afraid of losing our souls than falling of a 10,000-foot cliff. And the truth is, metaphorically, spiritually, we live our lives tippy-toeing along the very edge of a 10,000-foot cliff. Every decision matters. In a culture that is constantly attempting to deny and diminish personal responsibility, the gospel reminds us time and time again that personal responsibility is central to the human experience. Life should be lived carefully, not recklessly. People are fragile and wounded. Be gentle and thoughtful. To live life to the fullest is to live life thoughtfully. We can look at the saints and think that they were perfect people, but they were not perfect. They were sinners, just like us, who recognized their need for God and turned back to God. Let's look at our own lives and ask ourselves, if we have turned away from God at any point in our lives, and let's ask God for the strength to turn back to Him. As we end this episode of Catechism for Kids, I want to remind you that there are some things that are far more important than anything else. In the grand scheme of things, we can lose our money, we can lose our things, but we can never lose our soul. Our true treasure is in heaven. So let's make sure that we put God first in our choices and in our daily life. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Catechism for Kids. If you want to help support our mission and channel, please consider making a one-time donation with our Super Thanks. You can donate by clicking the Super Thanks button when you are watching our videos. Hey, if you're a kid and your parents are letting you watch this, give your parents a big hug for letting you watch this. Hey, why don't you subscribe so you never miss an episode? Hey, if you're a parent or a teacher and you're watching this with kids, it would be great if you gave us some feedback. What did the kids like best? What would the kids like to see in the future? Click the link in the description below and you can leave us a comment. Till next time, thank you and God bless you.